Hey folks, so in the previous video we covered a lot of the different blueprint nodes that came with the plugin. Plenty of them you could actually use to do some runtime troubleshooting of your input bindings. So in this video I'd like to focus on some quick troubleshooting tips and tools so you might be able to use to do a little bit more thorough troubleshooting. And of course where to get help if you do get stuck. Alright, so let's begin. The most common issue that we get is losing tracking or not being able to get any tracking at all, either in an editor session or during a package build. The first thing that you might want to have a look at is the plugin section. So just make sure that there's no other plugin that might be using SteamVRInput as well. And a common issue is with Oculus VR. So if you're using Oculus, you can disable the Oculus VR native plugin that comes with the engine. The problem with having it on is that it does take over tracking, as it's a priority when you have an Oculus VR app. But if you can disable this one though and just have the Steam VR input plugin enabled, and Steam should be able to handle the API calls to Oculus without this having to be enabled. So try disabling that and have a look if your tracking works. So more often than not, that's the issue for that. A lot of the other issues obviously involves debugging. So what's useful is, let's have a look at the SteamVR bindings dashboard. And in the SteamVR bindings dashboard here, you could see a couple of buttons at the bottom. So if you have developer mode, so there's a useful input debugger mode that you could have in this dashboard here. So if you only have two buttons like I do at the moment here, what you could do is enable developer debugging mode. So set developer and settings, and then under developer, enable debugging options in the input binding user interface. So just enable that. And then you need to restart SteamVR. So in this case, I'm just going to restart Unreal and have Unreal kickstart SteamVR. So let's just close that. Double click our project. Alrighty, so once that's back online, you could now reopen the dashboard. And in the dashboard, you should be able to see a couple more buttons in there. All right, so we have show developer output, which actually shows you how the actual bindings are. So you could use this as a template or to understand a little bit more of how the controller bindings work. All right, I'm just gonna hide that. And what you can also do is, obviously some of you might have already done this, so I could save a personal binding. So if I save that and I click back, I should be able to have a current binding in there. And if I edit that, the official bindings would still be here, right? So what's most people get into is if they click replace default binding and I click save, right? If I go back to the available bindings, you should see the official bindings, the one that actually comes with your application, gets overridden because you've clicked replace default binding. So I've just replaced that here, and the way to get out of this situation is if you go to the plugin and you regenerate the controller binding. So just remember, this is a destructive operation. So make sure you, if you've made some modifications, make sure you do make a backup and then just overwrite the new ones that gets regenerated afterwards. But for now, I'm just going to click regenerate controller bindings. And if I go back here, go back there, and you should see the official bindings come back here. So, and then it's just a matter of selecting the binding, and then you'll have the current binding as your default bindings that came with the app. And then I can now remove this one if I don't need to, or if I don't need that bindings. All right, so That's a quick tip on how to get out of that situation. So if you go to another useful thing here in the dashboard is the input debugger. So you could see here the all of the raw paths that we use in the controller bindings, and this depends on the driver that's or the hardware that's currently installed. So I've got the index controller at the moment, and you could see if some actions from here are unbound or if they are bound. If you see some stuff like this one, grab right unbound, make sure that your controller is on. So if I turn that controller on, the right controller, you should see that automatically get bound. Right? So obviously if you don't have anything bound here, something else is quite wrong with your bindings or with the app itself. And what you can do now is you could actually, during runtime, so if you played the the Moondust demo, it's pretty much similar. So you could see during runtime a lot of the inputs. So I'm just randomly pressing stuff in the controller at the moment. So you could see and troubleshoot whether the actions that you want to be triggered are actually being triggered properly and that they are bound. So you could use this. This is the one that's coming in from the driver or from SteamVR. We just use the left here, and you could see the values coming in, and these are the values that your app actually gets. All right. So if you're in an editor session, so we add this special session, UE editor, just to make sure that you're in an editor session. All right. So that's a quick way of using the input debugger. So failing that, you could also look at the log files. So the log files are the config file. Let's have a look at the config files just really quickly. So this is where all of the different controller bindings are, by the way. So if you want to back them up, just back up this entire folder here. You have the action manifest here. So this you could easily regenerate, but all of these you can actually back up and just to make sure you have a copy of them if you do some destructive operations in the editor here, like regenerate action manifest or regenerate controller bindings. All right, so back to the logs, sorry. So if you click on saved logs, and you should be able to see a couple of logs here. And if I open this and code, the normal thing that I quickly use, just check, is if we have a lot of this action setting. So we do put quite a bit in the logs at the moment since it's still in beta, just to help with troubleshooting a lot of apps or a lot of issues that we get from developers. So you could see if the action handles are being properly retrieved and set up, and if the editor application has been completely identified, and the action manifest path, this is quite critical, is actually has been properly set. All right, so so in most cases, if you have an issue, I would ask for these logs, or someone from the team would ask for these logs to review. The other place that you could look at as well, and it's quite useful, is if you go to developer web console, right, you could see runtime, the runtime output of the SteamVR logs. So some cases we would ask for these as well, just to make sure, just to see what's happening, or if another application is taking over SteamVR input for your app. Let me just do a quick demo here, if I can show them both. So you could see in runtime, if I generate the action manifest, a lot of the stuff that we do, or the calls that we do from within the plugin, you could see it reflected here, especially on the VR client. So you could filter that in here. if you want to study how the plugin does what it does, you could see, for example, if I regenerate the action manifest, you could see the calls that we actually make through there. If I reload the action manifest, you could see the actual calls that we make and potential issues. So yeah, I guess there's an issue with the plugin here that we need to fix. But yeah, so this is a good way of inspecting or checking out what's happening with the plugin. All right, so those are for the logs. So a lot of these are useful, and some of them can be quite cryptic if you're not used to reading them. So a good place to ask for help if you do get stuck is in our GitHub here. If you click on issues, just create a new issue, and this is normally we normally check this like every day, just to have a look and see and investigate any issues. So, and this is a good place as well to keep track of what's happening with the plugin or what's happening with your reported issue. And obviously, you could also do some pull requests. So feel free to do pull requests. It's just this person here who created a pull request, and we're happy to get them and include any useful ones that we can integrate into the plugin. We'd really appreciate that. All right, so another place that you can look at as well for getting help, especially if you don't have a GitHub account, is go to the SteamVR discussions. There's a pinned item here called SteamVR Unreal Plugin version 1.0. So just post something in there, and this will make sure that we get notifications of the issues that you might be having, and we could immediately reply to them. All right, so I guess that's pretty much it. So if we ask for logs, it'll be either the SteamVR logs that you get in here, or plenty of times it'll be the save logs in here. So either in the project or on the actual build. All right, so that's it for this quick troubleshooting tips video. So in the next one, we'll cover some special actions that came with the knuckles. And yeah, I'll see you on the next video. Cheers.